There's a moment in every teenager's life that feels heavier than the rest. Not because something loud happens, but because everything inside goes quiet. That moment for Sofia Alvarez came in the middle of second period. One hand clutched the strap of a backpack. The other, trembling just slightly, hung by her side. She stood at the front of a classroom full of faces she didn't recognize, in a language she barely understood, in a country that still didn't feel like hers. The teacher smiled gently, encouraging, "Can you tell us your name?" But the question didn't reach her. Or maybe it did, and that was the problem. Her heart was thudding so hard it blurred the edges of the room. The fluorescent lights above buzzed like they were watching too. Students shifted in their seats. A whisper to the left. A muffled giggle behind her. A cough. A pen tapping against a desk. She opened her mouth to speak. Her lips parted, then stopped. Nothing. A silence stretched too long. Long enough for her throat to tighten. Long enough for her vision to sting. Long enough for doubt to feel permanent. She lowered her eyes. And in that tiny movement, she disappeared. Not to anyone else. To herself. For weeks in a new country. 3 attempts to rehearse this exact moment at home. 2 parents who told her she was ready. 1 chance to prove they were right. Gone. She sat back down, cheeks burning. The teacher moved on. The classroom did too. But inside Sofia, something stayed stuck. This wasn't just about English. This was about whether she belonged at all. And the girl who hadn't said a word? She was about to meet someone who would hear her anyway. What happened next wouldn't just change her day. It would change her life. 3 weeks earlier, a plane touched down at Columbus International Airport. In one of the seats near the window sat a girl whose life had been packed into 2 suitcases and a backpack. Her name was Sofia Alvarez, 14 years old, born and raised in San Miguel, El Salvador. She had never seen snow. She had never heard school bells in English. She had never felt this uncertain about who she was. From the moment they landed, everything moved fast. Customs, luggage, car rental, new apartment keys exchanged in the freezing wind. But inside Sofia's chest, everything felt suspended, like she was still MIDI. She sat in the back seat of her parents' borrowed car, her cheek pressed to the window, watching buildings pass that she didn't know how to name. A world of Target signs, fast food drive-thrus, unfamiliar license plates. On her lap, a worn paperback, Spanish to English translations. Some pages bent, one corner stained with juice from the airport. She turned the same page over and over. But she wasn't reading. She was bracing. They told her school here would be better. That opportunity was worth the sacrifice. But no one told her how quiet it would feel to start over. Monday came. First day. Her mother braided her hair that morning while soft music played from the kitchen. Her father kissed her forehead, told her she was brave. But bravery didn't follow her into homeroom. Not when the teacher mispronounced her last name. Not when a boy in the second row laughed under his breath. She wanted to sink into her desk. She wished she could disappear beneath her hoodie. At lunch, she didn't eat. She sat alone, scrolling through a blank messaging app, pretending to text people who weren't there. Her tray stayed untouched. Words circled her. Slang, inside jokes, conversations too fast to catch. In the hallway, she walked with her eyes low. When someone said hi, she smiled nervously but didn't answer. Not because she didn't want to, because she didn't know how to say it the right way, how to sound like she belonged. And teachers? They spoke slower for her, louder, sometimes. But that only made her feel smaller. She understood more than they thought. But when it was her turn to speak, the words jammed. Every sentence felt like a trap. What if she messed up? What if they laughed again? At home, her parents asked how her day went. She said, "Fine." They looked tired. She didn't want to add more weight to their shoulders. So she stayed quiet, even though silence was starting to feel like a second skin. By week 2, no one really expected her to talk anymore. And that made it worse. Because when no one expects to hear your voice, you begin to believe it's better if they don't. But the truth? Sofia had things to say, stories to tell, songs in her notebook, dreams she hadn't yet found the words for. She just didn't know anyone was listening. Not yet. It was a Thursday. The lunchroom buzzed like usual. Trays sliding, chairs scraping, bursts of laughter from tables that already had their groups. Sofia sat at the far end of the cafeteria. Same spot she'd chosen every day that week. Close to the window, near the trash cans, where no one needed to make room for her. Her sketchbook lay open in front of her, not for drawing, but for hiding. Inside were lyrics she'd written in Spanish the night before. Half a chorus, unfinished. Her pencil hovered, but her eyes kept drifting. She could hear parts of conversations around her. None of them meant for her. None of them waiting for her to join. And then, a shadow, a tray slid across from her. Someone sat down. No hesitation. No permission asked. Just Saturday. Bright yellow headphones draped around her neck like they belonged there. A smile that didn't flinch. She wore a hoodie covered in band patches and her sneakers were scribbled on with permanent marker. She leaned forward, pointing at Sofia's sketchbook. "You like music?" she asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it didn't waver. It cut through everything else. Sofia blinked, froze. She glanced at the page, realized the girl had seen her lyrics. Spanish lyrics. She said nothing, too stunned to move. The girl didn't leave, didn't fill the silence. Instead, she unwrapped a granola bar, took a bite, and leaned back like she was staying. After a pause, she added, "I like writing too. I do poems. Bad ones. But still." Sofia kept her head down. But something shifted. Barely. A crack in the wall. The kind that lets in light. Just for a second. The girl extended her hand. "I'm Amora." Sofia didn't shake it. Not yet. But she didn't pull away either. And that was the beginning. Not of a conversation, but of something else. Presence. For the first time in weeks, someone had chosen her table. Not by accident. Not out of pity. Just because. And what neither of them knew yet, what neither of them could have guessed, was how much one quiet lunch would echo across the rest of Sofia's year. The girl with the yellow headphones didn't know Spanish, but she knew how to listen. And sometimes, that's all it takes to unlock something that's been waiting far too long to be heard. Amora came back the next day. Same seat. Same smile. Same yellow headphones resting around her neck like they were part of her. Sofia had expected it to be a one-time thing. A random act. Something strange and fleeting. But Amora didn't treat it like anything special. She pulled out her lunch, unwrapped her sandwich, and started talking. Not at Sofia. With her. Even if Sofia barely replied. Even if her answers were just shrugs or small nods. Amara noticed the music scribbled in the corners of Sofia's sketchbook. "You wrote that?" she asked one day, pointing to a line that read like a chorus. Sofia gave a half smile. A yes without saying yes. Amara grinned. "Cool. You ever write hooks? Like, in English too?" No reply. But Sofia didn't close the book. She left it open. That was enough. At lunch, they became a pair. Not the loud kind. The steady kind. And then came the whispers. Someone near their table asked, "Why do you always sit with her?" Amara answered without missing a beat. "She's chill. You'll just don't get her yet." Sofia heard that. Every word. And something loosened in her chest. Something that had been clenched for too long. But school still wasn't easy. In math, the instructions confused her. In English, group work made her shrink. Teachers called on her less, assuming she'd struggle. And sometimes, she did. But when she failed, it wasn't the wrong answer that crushed her. It was the silence that followed. Then came the assignment. A class presentation. 3 minutes. In English. Alone. The teacher handed out the rubric. Students groaned. Sofia's palms turned cold. She couldn't breathe. That night, she sat on her bed staring at the blank screen. A blinking cursor. A heart that felt like it might cave in. She put her head down. Tried not to cry. But the tears came anyway. Soft. Quiet. Like everything else she'd been holding in. The next day, she didn't eat lunch. She kept her head down. Her sketchbook stayed closed. Amara noticed. Didn't ask what was wrong. She just leaned over and said, "You want to practice together? I can help. I got you." Sofia didn't respond. But later that afternoon, after school, when the hallways emptied, she waited by the lockers, holding the paper with her presentation ideas scribbled in both languages. Waiting, Amara showed up, grinned, said, "Let's go." They practiced every day that week. In the band room, in the library, even outside the gym while waiting for Amara's ride. Sofia stumbled over words, got stuck on pronunciations, laughed awkwardly, but Amara never corrected her harshly. She repeated the words, slower, softer, and every time Sofia got it right, Amara threw her hands up like they'd won a trophy. One night, they stayed on a video call until nearly midnight. Amara beatboxed softly while Sofia read her presentation out loud. One sentence at a time, again and again. And somewhere in those nights of stumbles and shared snacks and bad jokes, Sofia stopped counting how many words she knew. Because now, she had someone to speak them to. Someone who listened. Someone who didn't wait for perfect. Just honest. She still feared the moment she'd stand up and speak. Still heard the old voice in her head. The one that said she didn't belong. Didn't sound right. Shouldn't try. But that voice was softer now. Buried under laughter, encouragement, and a growing sense that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invisible anymore. The day arrived. Presentation day. A whiteboard filled with nervous scribbles. Chairs shuffled. Students murmured. Papers crinkled. But Sofia heard none of it. All she felt was her own heartbeat. Steady, unrelenting. Like footsteps approaching something she wasn't ready for. The teacher called her name. Sofia stood. She didn't feel her legs move. They just did. Every step to the front of the class felt like walking across a bridge that had never been tested. She turned. 20 faces looked back at her. Some indifferent. Some curious. One, encouraging. Amara sat in the third row, arms crossed, chin tilted up like she was daring the world to underestimate her friend. That look, Sofia held on to it. She unfolded her paper, hands trembling just enough to notice. She looked down, then up, then down again. Her voice caught, not from a lack of knowledge, but from the weight of the moment. Then she whispered the first word. It came out thin, barely there. A pause. She swallowed, and tried again, louder this time, more certain. The room quieted, not because they pitied her, but because something had shifted. The way she spoke, the way her accent carried her words. Not perfectly, but proudly. There was honesty in her voice. A quiet rhythm, a cadence that didn't ask for permission. It just existed, full of meaning, full of effort. She shared her story, how music made her feel safe, how lyrics helped her learn, how silence wasn't weakness, just waiting for the right melody. She even read one of her original lines, in Spanish and English. No one laughed, no one whispered, no one looked away. And when she finished, she didn't run, she didn't hide. She stood there, eyes lifted, breathing deeper than she had in weeks. The class broke into applause. Not the kind that's forced. Not polite. Real. Genuine. Loud. She smiled. For the first time that month. It reached her eyes. Amara clapped the hardest, then held up her hand like she'd been waiting to say something. The teacher nodded. Amara grinned. All I'm saying is, I told y'all. She's got bars. The class laughed. Not at Sofia, but with her. For once. She wasn't outside the moment. She was in it. And something inside her. Something long held back. Unlocked. Not because she'd spoken flawlessly. Not because her accent had vanished. But because she'd tried. And been heard. Because someone believed in her long enough. For her to believe in herself. The school day ended. But something lingered. Not nerves. Not relief. Something lighter. Sofia stepped into the hallway. Shoulders no longer hunched. Eyes no longer searching for the floor. Amara was waiting by the lockers. Headphones around her neck. That same crooked smile on her face. Yo, she said, as if the past few hours were just a normal Tuesday. Sofia chuckled. The kind of laugh that didn't hide. It echoed down the hallway. Small but unafraid. They walked side by side through the doors. Sunlight catching the edge of Sofia's braid. Wind brushing through her notebook as she held it close. Outside, voices filled the courtyard. But for the first time, Sofia didn't tune them out. A boy from her class waved. Another girl nodded, mouthing good job. She returned both gestures. Not perfectly, but purposefully. Weeks passed. The cafeteria felt different. Less like a stage. More like a space she belonged in. She joined the music club. Wrote verses in 2 languages. Helped others with pronunciation. And asked for help when she needed it. At home, her parents noticed the shift. She'd started humming again while doing homework. And when they asked how her day went, she didn't just say fine. She shared. With words. Real ones. New ones. But it wasn't just about speaking. It was about knowing that she didn't have to erase who she was. To be part of something new. Her accent wasn't a flaw. It was a signature. Her silence wasn't emptiness. It had been space for growth. Sofia didn't become the loudest in the room. She didn't need to be. What changed was that her voice, when it came from a place of truth. And the girl who once tried to disappear into hallways was now a steady presence. Quiet, but no longer hidden. She hadn't just learned to speak. She'd learned that being understood starts with believing you deserve to be. Months later, in a different hallway, on a quieter morning, Sofia stood beside another girl. The girl clutched her binder to her chest, eyes darting, unsure of where to go. Sofia recognized that posture, that silence. She didn't wait for a teacher. She didn't look away. She simply said, in the calmest voice she had, "Wanna sit with me today?" But now, she was the one creating space, the one offering belonging. Sometimes, it only takes one moment, one person who sees you, before you know how to be seen. That's all it took for Sofia. That's all it might take for someone watching this now. Have you ever been afraid to speak? Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? If someone helped you find your voice, tell us in the comments below. Oh, maybe this story reminded you to be that someone for somebody else. Sparkles, like, share, and subscribe for more stories you can feel. Stories that understand what it's like to be growing, searching, and finding your way.